Hey, muy buenas noches, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. And as always, muchísimas gracias to everyone for everyone's words, prayers, and your amazing support. Desde el corazón, I appreciate every one of you. Gracias. And do please like, share, and subscribe. Now, to get into the story in here, tonight I want to take you back a while. Mainly speak about an individual that you could say the power got into his head and how mellow headed, good camarada, right? For sticking up with what it should have been, right? Due to favoritism, started getting moved on and eventually it would take his career per se and call it as so. But anyways, I want to take you back to Corcoran. This was 2003, right before I got validated and, went over there to be yard. As I stated before in current videos telling my story, I had the responsibility of Navy Yard because I was the one present there. But the ones I was in touch with the most was Indio from 18th Street and Playboy or Wolfy from White Fence. And of course Artie, right? But it was us three and Artie, to say it like that, right? I actually spoke about this in the past story a little bit, but I've been asked a lot to speak about the camarada Speedy from Torrance, right? He was a brother, right? But he was a homie. And as shattered it is, to me, that never had any type of meaning, right? He was part of us, period. So it's always the same, right? But it comes into play when certain things surface, right? Again, Speedy was an older homie, well, at least older than myself. And usually I always touch base with Wolfie or Speedy, right? When I was on A yard, when the pipeline to B yard was medical. At the time, there was nothing wrong with me, per se, right? I still had not gone through the cancer trip or nothing, but nevertheless, we knew it was there, right? The pipeline. So we put in for medical and we meet up there and, you know, exchange the mariposas or papalotes from one angle to the next, coming and going, right? And, again, me being an A yard, of course, the short, conversations that we had in medical and the little bird cages, they were all females, right? We didn't have that much time to get to know each other like that, right? But a lot of different things that surfaced from homies from the harbor area that Speedy took always personal or at least hands on, right? He was involved to get to the bottom, and if area cleanup was to be met, he made sure it was met, or however, right? He was real like that. He didn't like that people got passes, specifically if they were violating the guidelines. At this time, I don't know how long he had been validated, for, but he had been back there for a while, as Wolfie, Indio, well, everybody that was there, right? But like I told you, there was a time that the plug, one of them verdes, right, basically was bringing in what was considered, ice. And for those that know our program, that's a no-no, period. There has never been no wiggle room there. Most of the carnales, they don't permit it as arty. He had a really, per se, something against it, right? Camaradas that got used to him were getting fined. Again, Wolfie and India were in charge of that. And now they will get removed from the program. But in this little run, right, where it was mostly what was coming in, man, everybody was on it. And to be sincere, there's certain things that as the person responsible for the yard, you don't have to even request, right? It was the time of group yards, right? Before they started all that dog cages. So they would go out there, they were caught tweaking, and they would get regulated, right? At least that's how I had it for a while, right? It was no discipline type of thing. It was you getting regulated, period. Because it's something that it's treacherous, something that you can't trust, period. Start getting paranoid, start telling, you know, it's bad. I never seen the difference between carga and that, right? But nevertheless, speed was definitely out the window, right? And don't get me wrong, I knew certain people up there that they loved it and they never got questioned for it, but that comes with being above the program, right? But as I mentioned before, there was a time that 1 block, 2 block, and A-yard, and this is before I hit B-yard, right? And even 4 left, there was a few individuals that were tripping on their cellies, but I want to talk about 2 specific vatos on this one. They were over there in one right, with Marty from Gary Lomas. This was a good camarada, right? With a good head on his shoulders. He took care of business when it came to block, period, right? But there was 2 individuals, and one somebody speaks about him real highly, right? And it's the one I want to circle around in this one. This individual, every time he ran across him, had that little word to in his mouth, right? Legends or whatever, right? But that was his word. But he was from white fence. They call him Spooky. And as, I'm not going to say shameful because it happened to every neighborhood, every city. He was held up with one of my homeboys, right? From my neighborhood. Couple generations after me, but nevertheless, from the town. And they were going on good ones, right? They were basically the ones that would touch base, right? With the inwards of things, of this type of jale. So they would get broken off and they would go on a sick one, right? They would get their issue, but it was to basically sling it mainly to the woods, right? Because they love it and it's permitted with them. But they will go on a good one. And as I stated before, the homie from White Fans and the vato from my neighborhood, they went on good ones, started flipping out because certain regulations were happening on their yards and for different reasons, and it didn't have nothing to do with that type of material, right? Or the uses, but it would start feeling Zapata and Pancho Villa after them, so they would start flipping out on each other. And they started doing way out stuff that it shouldn't be allowed, period, right? Or they shouldn't get a pass. Now keep in mind, 2 cells down from them, there was 2 homies from the harbor area. Ant and his homeboy, excuse I can't recall his name, but they were both from Torrance. And anyways, these 2 cells, they started getting so twacked out and paranoid that they started jumping on each other. And excuse I express myself, but just to get into the inside of things correctly, they would literally pin each other down to the floor, put the little panties down and open up their butt cheeks, thinking they had a fierro up there, right? And they were going to move on them and hit them. They had gotten regulated already, right? For this, and they didn't have a monkey, they had a whole gorilla on their thing, right? Because again, that pipeline was constant and good, right? To the point of the amount. Nevertheless, it came to the point where I went out to medical and I'm basically, it wasn't in my hands no more to take someone's career, right? That was something that I had to run across to verify it first and foremost, because I'm not going to say it wasn't in my hands to call it. I didn't want it falling on me, right? Favoritism, fulanito, sutanito usually has a ricochet, so you have to back that play. So, of course, I dropped it on Speedy's hand, and I kind of, ran things with on how it was happening for a few, and it didn't matter if it was my homeboy, he was He was doing whatever, right? That he had it coming. So, it eventually reached whoever needed to be reached over there. And Speedy said, "It's up to me. Them two butters from my town. Dales gas, homie. If they already been tipped up, they don't want to listen, go ahead and prove a point with them." So I told him, "All right, just please do run it over there to make sure everybody is on the same boat. And when it happens, there's no return, right? Or there's no wiggle room for them to call favors and becomes a headache. So it got done like that, and unfortunately, Artie ran it through Playboy, and he thought he was above all of us back there, right? And you could say in some tense he was, right? But anyways, he said, "Nah, let me see if I could get at the homie." But Speedy was dead lock on, "Nah, if they're bringing poison to the homie Martin's block, then go ahead and they don't want to listen. They prefer dope over the program." And that actually stung Wolfy even more, right? Because I would later find out that himself and a few others, they were on that trying to trip. Never acted in them type of ways, but nevertheless they were using this as it was coming in. But more so, he wanted to stick up for his homeboy, right? For his neighborhood. And two boats were there from different angles, right? Mine, which in reality they didn't matter. Speedy's with the watch from Torrance, and it was just him, right, having an issue. Anyways, A-Yard is a normal shoe, so eventually Vato got put out for New Folsom, where he landed with his homeboy, right, from 805. And as you guys probably heard him speak about this individual. So anyways, my respects. It's not my business, right? But he got moved there, and then not Spooky got moved, but Wolf, he was okay with everybody that violated to get hit and removed, which had happened to the dot, right? But you see, when they were all back there validated again, the homie Speedy, he was a black homie, but he was fearless, respectful, knew the program in and out. More importantly, he was down to maintain the program to the dot, right? No favors here or there. And he didn't feel comfortable, after the fact that my homeboy got hit and the other vatos got hit, so he kept pressing on it to the point that he pressed under different eyesight on Playboy Wolfy, right? Which was on his uses. That he was a straight, on glass himself. That's why it was favoritism. All of a sudden it was cool for people to get whacked as long as they weren't from his neighborhood. That type of favoritism and the breaking rules and regulation could be a death sentence back there in a validated issue, right? Especially if the main one ain't you. So it became a big old thing. And sorry to say, a lot of people don't think as myself. To me, we're sureños, campuleros. Speedy was one, right, to the fullest. All that, you're this, whatever, should never matter, period. We're the same thing. But it started coming into play. Basically, a lot of dirty things started being pressed on Speedy. Like, for example, that he okayed that issue that happened with Wino and Sal from Torrance for that Wino sending Wino that bug. They send Speedy back Wino's play. And another thing is, a lot of different BS stuff came out on Speedy that it was just lies from Wolfy. But most importantly, since he had some breach on the streets as in different prisons, of course, artists gonna favor him, right? That's what someone that's a part of his movement per se. Not the Campolero, but they're above that. So we opened that door with Speedy, and I don't know. I just know the surface type of things that got pushed on Speedy. So I would refrain from even speaking on my neck without having the in facts, right? But as you guys know, he would eventually get moved on and basically politicked on and washed up. And for what? It's the way prison works. Favoritism. It ain't about who you know, it's about what you do. See, them two vatos, I didn't know that they were the main ones plugged in con el verde, bringing in that yellow, not just to A yard, but also touching down on B yard. It was a homie from Whitefinch that had that come in as he did when he got to New Folsom, right? And at the end of the day, what's better? To keep someone in the program that have a long time loyal in the program, in the causa like Speedy, or someone that's bringing in jale, money to the table. More so when it was going to be a negative strike on Wolfy, right? Wolf on the streets of this neighborhood. He didn't want that. So it was easier to remove the veterano homie that's been back there sitting for a long time than somebody that's overall not doing things the way he's supposed to be, period. Because if he would have seen that stuff ain't working in the sense of making feria, it's just hurting the raza, he should have hit the brakes on it, right? And moved to a different thing. But I guess it was a buying type of thing directly from the verde. It wasn't like you could take whatever to him. Anyways, there were some guidelines amongst that I don't know exactly, right? Nevertheless, it's how it always works. When I got to be here, I'm not gonna say I pressed the issue, but I did bring into conversation to a couple Billies. One was Raul, of course, and the other one was the old man from Watt, Fox at one time. And all three of them told me, Callado, don't allow Wolfie to hear this, right? Because that vato, he's poisoning New Folsom. And the vatos there allowing him to do whatever he wants because he's bringing in the bag. And yup, you see all that the Jura was putting certain guidelines to bringing in stuff, and his stuff to AR was BS made up by Wolfie to protect his homeboy. And again, it's favoritism. But there's jale, there's feria involved. So you could be as good as you say, or as if there's a book to say what a Southsider, Campolero supposed to be, that was Speedy. But all the other stuff trumps. That's why, again, I want this to concentrate on that, right? Don't give your life or the belief of you coming in and ever doing everything correctly to get somewhere. You're only worth what you can put in their pocket and in their vein, period. And if not, sorry to say, as myself, we're meant to get done dirty, and eventually, you're gonna be back there with life and in a place that you will always speak ill of. I thank God I never had to go that route right inside, but I'll tell you one thing. There was many, many times that I was expecting it, at least to get moved on, and I say I would always come out and take my medicine and keep punching through till I couldn't no more. But I wasn't in that situation, so again, I'm speaking without intel, right? And I don't like to do that. Just be smart. Don't go into something that everything tells you there's just nothing there. And if you're already there, boot up, suit up, boogie. But between the program, don't get pulled into BS that, again, there's no wiggle around of it. Be smart, stay true to yourself, and loyal to your loved ones. Buenas noches.